whole world. That's not just a local sort of deal.
Alan Tonelson.
Well, one of the reasons that U.S. manufacturers love to manufacture in places like China and Mexico is because even if they have environmental laws on their books, they're not enforced because they feel that further modernization, further growth, and creating more employment for their own people is much more important. So the more U.S. trade policy pushes American-based manufacturing into low-wage, low-regulation countries like this, clearly the dirtier our air and water will actually be.
Alan Tonelson is a research fellow at the U.S. Business Industry Council. He's also a research associate at the George Washington University Center for International Science and Technology, and as a Henry L. Stimson Center visiting fellow in China. He was. Okay. Christopher Wenk, in addition to being the International Trade Policy Director at the National Association of Manufacturers, before joining that, he spent 5 years working on Capitol Hill as the working for the House Small Business Committee under Congressman Steve Chabot and Congressman Dave Camp of Michigan. He was a senior member of the House Ways and Means Committee, and he also interned at the delegation of the European Commission in Washington, D.C. We've been talking for the most part about trade deficit with China. Let me ask you, how does our trade compare, the trade deficit or the trade balance compare with our European partners, and what effect is that having on our economies on both sides of the Atlantic?
Well, thank you for your question. Certainly, if you look at our trade deficit, our biggest trade deficit is with China. You know, there's no question that that is above and beyond where most of our trade deficit is. We do have a trade deficit with the European Union as well, although it has been declining. Actually, the numbers that came out last week shows that they are declining. I think that the value of the dollar has something to do with that the euro has been increasing and the value of the dollar has been decreasing. But you know, we still have a huge, vibrant trading relationship with the European Union. But by and large, most of our trade deficit is with China.
Alan Tonelson, your characterization of our trade balance with Europe?
It's much higher. Our trade deficit with Europe is much higher than it should be. The U.S. dollar has become weaker versus the euro, certainly since early 2002, when the value of the U.S. dollar against most of the world's major currencies actually peaked. And yet our trade deficit with the so-called Eurozone countries, those countries that do use the euro, has remained way too high. What's also strange about this is that we're constantly being told that in terms of manufacturing and competitiveness, Europe is yesterday's meatloaf. They're not competitive. They have too many regulations. Their workers earn way too much money. They're lazy. They take 7-week vacations. And yet, this hopelessly uncompetitive European economy is beating America's supposedly world-class manufacturing in this U.S. market, in European markets, and in third markets also. It's a very strange situation.
We're talking about free trade agreements. Louisville, Texas. Good morning.
Good morning, C-SPAN. I think that Bill Clinton, when he pushed NAFTA, did it out of humanitarian reasons. But it has been such a hard thing for American workers to adjust to this that I've just wondered, I've been curious because I voted for him because I thought he had the best grasp of the worldwide economic situation of any candidate for president that I'd voted for in a lifetime. And then I have a comment.
Christopher Wenk.
Yeah, well, thank you for your call, ma'am. You know, I believe that we are still fighting NAFTA. I know I hear this all the time that NAFTA was so bad, but you know, if you look at the statistics, it just is not the case. 46 out of the 50 states, NAFTA is their #1 export market. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, if you look at our overall manufactured goods trade deficit of $530 billion, $30 billion of that is with NAFTA and our other FTA partners. And if you look at even within NAFTA itself, our trade deficit with NAFTA, 70% of that is oil imports. And, you know, I know that in this country we talk a lot about wanting to reduce our dependence on foreign oil from the Middle East for a very good reason. But we get a lot of our oil from Mexico and Canada. I don't think that people realize that. So, I think we are still fighting NAFTA, but at the end of the day, NAFTA has been a very positive thing for the U.S. economy. And if you look at the figures and you look at the rhetoric, they just do not match up.
Mobile, Alabama, on our line for independence. Good morning.
Hi, how are you doing?
Just fine, sir. Go right ahead.
I just want to make a comment. General Electric, they're fixing, they manufacture jet engines, and they're fixing to produce most of those in China now. There was a thing in, it might have been Business Week, or I'm trying to remember what magazine, but what's the downside to that? Because it's so much cheaper to manufacture in China, and the CEO gets a bigger raise. I mean, Americans just aren't competitive, and they have, it's expensive to hire Americans. They're not productive. So, I mean, what's the downside for a company to manufacture in China? I mean, you're going to save a lot of money doing that. So,
thanks for your call, Alan Tonelson.
Well, the problem with manufacturing in China is that most of the various factors that go into determining Chinese competitiveness versus U.S. are not the products of free market forces, because China is not a free market economy by a long shot, for all the hype that we've heard for the last 25 years, and despite lots of very real structural change that has gone on. But China has a long way to go before it's an even substantially free market economy. So when we talk about Chinese competitiveness versus U.S., we have to recognize that China's government has been tilting that playing field and actively working to create Chinese advantage. The U.S. government doesn't respond at all, even when China's practices clearly violate international trade law, U.S. trade law, and common commercial norms. But one thing that jet engine manufacturers ought to be thinking about very carefully is the longer they manufacture in China, the more manufacturing in China they actually do, the likelier their core intellectual property is to be stolen.
We get this email from Len Charlap in Princeton, New Jersey. Would you ask your guest about the contribution globalization has on the greatest economic problem of the U.S., namely the increasing inequality in both income and wealth? First, Alan Tomlinson.
What I'm worried about most is not so much the rising rich-poor gap, which is a very real problem, but it's the nature of this rising rich-poor gap. And what we've seen is not the very wealthier getting wealthier at a much more rapid pace than the rest of us, but even the rest of us perhaps still becoming wealthier, but the wealthier getting richer, while the middle class and poor are either stagnating in terms of their incomes or getting poorer. So we're having the great majority of the American workforce has become worse off, especially in the last 30 or so years of globalization, than it had been before. And one thing we need to keep in mind is that we have had wage stagnation or decline, again, for the great majority of U.S. workers for more than 35 years now. That's never before happened in U.S. economic history, and it started just about the time that the American economy began to open itself up wide open to imports from all over the world.
Christopher Wank.
Well, thank you for your the question. Globalization is here to stay, and I know that there are a lot of anxieties across America about the impact of trade on the U.S. economy, on jobs, and I think that, right now we're kind of at a crossroads in U.S. trade policy. This is really going to give us a real opportunity to take a look at these. I know that Chairman Rangel of the House Ways and Means Committee and Chairman Baucus of the Senate Finance Committee are going to be holding a lot of hearings in the next couple of months to look at some of the challenges that globalization is having on the U.S. economy and how we can address some of these concerns. For example, Trade Adjustment Assistance for Workers is a very important program. That program expires later this year. I know that the Bush administration has put in their budget request to increase funding for this program. And, there are going to be a variety of other issues that are going to be looked at by this Congress. And I think this will be a very good opportunity to take a look at some of the anxieties that there are across the world.
Our next call for Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Good morning.
Good morning. My main concern is China. I consider China to be potentially and probably our enemy. I understand that they even make components for our weapon systems, our great weapon systems, our smart bombs. And the fact that we need them, how can we ever defend ourselves from them? And I also think that Mr. Wank and people like him are traitors to this country. Benedict Arnold was a better American than you.
Why do you say that he's a traitor, sir?
Because their main goal is to make the rich richer. I mean, business people want to rule the world, and countries, governments are becoming subsidiaries of this. It's happening in Europe. It's happening here. They want to get rid of our border with Mexico and Canada. And the United States as an entity, as an independent free nation, is about to disappear from the face of the earth.
Christopher Wank.
Well, with all due respect, sir, I am certainly not a traitor. I work for